Welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso, the creator host of our show. Today we welcome Diane Pleuss from Franchise. Diane shared a number of important points to consider when you're thinking about starting or owning a business. First, she said not everyone should own a business, and I really appreciated that. She said success in business is about risk and determination. Other experiences help mold who we become. She also talked about today's environment is about providing opportunities that may not have been available in the past. I know you're going to enjoy the episode today, so on to the ascent. Welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso, the creator and host of our show, and I am excited to welcome to our show today Diane Pleuss. Now, I'm going to tell you about Diane in just a second. I know she's going to share some amazing thoughts around being an entrepreneur, being a franchise owner. And yet, before we get started, let's find out who Diane is. So first of all, since 2004, Diane has matched hundreds of entrepreneurs with their perfect fit franchise opportunity while successfully guiding them to avoid rookie mistakes. I'd call those entrepreneurial mistakes, and we all make them. Diane's done a lot of amazing things with franchises. She's also, as a result, helped people create wealth, making an impact on their marketplace and enjoying the systems already in place to accelerate their path to success. So, Diane, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Pat. I love your energy, and I'm so happy to be here.
Well, so Diane, and we're grateful to have you here. And, you know, the Success Ascent is about entrepreneurs and their journey of success. And certainly as someone who works with entrepreneurs and helping select franchises, you've got a lot that you can share. And so before we jump into that, though, I'd love to hear something about you that maybe, you know, people don't know, or maybe you don't share. It's just a way I like to have some fun with our guests. So what don't people know about you?
Well, people usually don't know that I have a home economics degree. I also have another communication major, so I graduated from college with a double major. But at the time when I entered college, I had wanted to be a 4-H youth agent. And in order to do that, you needed a home ec degree. And I basically don't cook. I set a mean table, and that's about it. But allowed me to get in.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So Diane, let's talk about you know, your experience as an entrepreneur, and, you know, what have you learned along the way in your entrepreneurial journey?
I've learned that many times people, I think, shortchange themselves. When I got into franchising, I thought that anyone who was a franchise owner, known as a franchisee, I thought they were Superman or Superwoman. And as I got to know the people, I realized that they were just like you and me. They may have had more confidence in themselves, but they said, I can follow the system. I can be trained. I can learn this. I've got a good work ethic. And it opens up so many possibilities. So that's the part is not to shortchange yourself, to consider more options.
Absolutely. So what have you, like, you know, as an entrepreneur, you personally, like, what have you learned in your journey? Like, what ceilings have you hit? What challenges, obstacles?
Well, I feel very fortunate in that I don't know that I have hit any ceilings. I've always been in jobs or with my own personal business now where the potential is there. It's how hard do I want to work? What do I want to contribute? There is no one stifling me or pushing me down.
Okay.
And even when I got into business, people were gracious, were kind. They would give me appointments. I had to earn the second appointment or their business, but they gave me that opportunity, and then it was up to me to capitalize on it.
So no setbacks?
Well, certainly everyone has setbacks, but I don't think anything major. I feel very fortunate in that regard.
So what have you learned from that journey?
Well, what I've learned is that there are opportunities, and even with very, let's say, medical things. So I've had back surgery. I've had disc replacement or whatever it's called. I've had hip surgery. My husband has had a variety of medical issues. Our daughter required a number of surgeries. And I can remember at one hospital, they had a little business center, and I would go there and sometimes work during the day.
Mhm.
And I can't say that I was particularly productive. I think people could still hear that I had this concern, this
Right.
edge on my voice, and I should have just taken a break and taken
Sure.
time rather than try to squeeze an hour or two for work.
Yeah. Being present is so important because people can kind of sense that you're not, even though you attempt to mask it or hide it, if you may, or just not allow people to see that. So Diane, let me ask you this: in your journey, what has surprised you? Every entrepreneur I speak with, there was some surprise they had along the way in being an entrepreneur, like something they weren't expecting. What would you say to that?
Well, there again in the franchise world, hopefully we minimize those surprises because we
Right.
do a good investigation of the company. We ask lots of questions. We talk to other franchisees. So while we can't discover everything, we do have a pretty good idea if a business is a good fit for a person or not.
Okay.
Surprises might be to some extent what the opportunity is.
Okay.
I think personally, maybe I underestimated some things and found that there is this big whole wide world out there.
Okay. Can you give an example of something that you maybe underestimated in your journey?
Well, one thing I totally underestimated was many years ago, I got into radio advertising sales.
Okay.
A previous boss had told me that I needed to get into sales at some point in my life. He said, "You'll probably starve and you only have to do it for a year,
Yeah.
but you need that experience." So I had been a marketing director for a large regional mall, and one of the radio station reps was going on to become a sales manager at another station.
Sure.
So her spot was open. I was offered her position,
Okay.
and I probably would not have taken it had this old boss not said, "You need some sales experience. You just have to survive for a year."
Oh, that's funny.
So I took the job. I found out that I did okay, and there was opportunity there.
Yeah.
So who would have guessed?
Yeah. That's interesting, right? I mean, that's just it. We all need that experience, that sales experience. So good for you and that advice. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about, so in your world today, you're working with people who are looking for new opportunities or maybe to add to opportunities they already have. And so I want to delve into that. However, I want to maybe broach a subject right now that everybody is talking about, and that is the Great Resignation, the Great Transformation, the Great Move to another opportunity, whatever you want to call it. So talk about that right now. What are you seeing in your world around that, about what's happening?
Well, people, I believe now are opening up their minds to other options. They're learning that they can work from home, that they're self-disciplined, that they can get the work done, that maybe they don't like that commute or they don't miss the office, sometimes with the office politics.
Okay.
So they now have additional venues to explore. They could look at franchise business ownership, something they could do either full time or potentially keep the job and do a manager run business. So for a few people, they want to diversify. They've got more gas in the tank, so to speak. They've got that
Expensive
drive.
gas today, though. It's expensive gas.
That was probably not a good analogy.
No,
Maybe
it's okay though. It's okay. I always like to have a little fun.
So people working at home, I think, discover that they could stay employed. They
Sure.
could look at another employer. They don't necessarily have to go to an office depending upon who employs them.
Okay.
So again, they have windows of opportunity that have opened to them.
Okay. So here's a question. It might be a little controversial, and I'm going to ask it anyways. Like, should everybody be a franchise owner?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Okay.
No, and
And I was expecting that answer. So you've got all these people now who are thinking, and there's a lot of reasons why, right? Like if I was driving an hour and a half each way a day, and now all of a sudden I didn't have to, and I understood what that looked like in my world, I ain't ever doing that again, right? So, and if I was in a culture that, didn't work for me, and now I don't have to be in that culture, maybe it's close to it, I'm looking at other opportunities. But so how do people go about like let's say I come to you and I'm not a great candidate to be an entrepreneur, a franchise owner. Like, how do you handle that?
very kindly. Most of the time, people learn what it takes and they self-select out.
Okay.
So sometimes people will say, I hate my job, I hate my boss, whatever the case is. And they
Yep.
start learning about a franchise and what it takes. And sometimes they'll say, you know what? I know that job and I can do it. And I'm going to stick there. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and and I want to kind of run through some obstacles before we get into the meat of what we want to talk about. So now, like the next obstacle for a lot of people is the cost of a franchise. Like, how do they overcome that? When you look at some franchises, like if I want to open a chicken shack or something, it's $2 million to be able to open it. Like, where do people start with that?
Well, usually they don't start at what would be called big food because it's very expensive. It's
Okay.
higher risk and many times brutal hours. So there are many options outside of food.
Okay.
And many times people will start with these because they're lower investment, lower risk. They can get started. Sometimes they can scale that business again without a lot of additional funds.
Okay.
So let's take something like a senior care franchise. Now, this
Okay.
isn't that large facility, but you would lease office space, usually in an executive building, and you would hire the caregivers. You would be involved in the community. You'd be talking to discharge nurses, building referral sources. You would start with a few caregivers, and as those caregivers are producing more hours and more clients, and you need more caregivers, so you'll continue to grow and scale that business. So you can start relatively small. At some point in time, you'll probably outgrow that small office and need to grow to a bigger office. But that's fine because then you've got that revenue to support that.
So let's say that I go through the process, I get excited about a franchise, let's say, and I'm able to secure some capital. That was a tough one. And now I'm like a franchise owner. Woohoo!
Woo-hoo.
What does a typical day look like for a franchise owner?
Well, that of course will depend upon the business, but most of the time you're working on the business and not necessarily in the business. So
Okay.
you could be making sure that your crews are set, that they know what they're doing for the day. You may be reviewing the marketing that you're doing, the finances. You may be working with other franchisees or talking with home office. You may be talking with vendors.
Okay. And so then, let's go back to, from your perspective, what does it take for a business owner like to be successful? What does it take?
It takes some grit and determination. It takes an open mind, someone who is coachable.
Okay.
So you've got this franchise company who has gone ahead and they've developed a system and infrastructure. And most of the people look at that and they say, that's pretty cool. I would have never thought of all of the details, and they've put it all together. And I'm receptive. I'm going to follow it. And then hopefully the result would be they would do well, they would make money, they would be happy and fulfilled as well.
Okay, so let's take that and say, what happens from your perspective to cause that doesn't happen?
If that doesn't happen, sometimes people, when they write out that franchise check, think that they automatically know everything and they do it their way.
Okay.
I've had people who have done that, gone to the first convention, thought they were doing pretty well,
Sure.
connected with some of the fellow franchisees that they were in trading with, and realized that they weren't doing very well at all. Their other fellow franchisees were doing much better. Sometimes they've said, gee, it's been humbling. I am now going with the program.
Right, right. So let's say I just present a couple. I know, we've experienced them in our area. What do you think causes a franchise to be sold to somebody, an entrepreneur who's really excited to invest as their capital, and then it doesn't stay in business? Is that a poor franchise model? Is it a poor selection? Like, what do you think contributes to that?
Well, I would be making some assumptions here without
Of
knowing
course.
more details. My first thought would be they might be undercapitalized.
Okay.
So a franchise company always has certain liquidity and net worth requirements. And that's to make sure that if you're starting the business and we've got a bump in the road, that you can survive it and not have to close your doors because you run out of capital. And you might be a month away, but you
Right.
have to have a certain amount of liquidity and be able to have a certain amount of staying power.
What do you think are the 2 or 3 most important factors? If I'm somebody who's hearing this podcast and I'm like had enough with where I'm at and I want to be my own owner, like what do you think are the 2 or 3 most important criteria I should be asking myself to maybe, determine if I should go down that path of owning a franchise?
Well, I think introspection is key. So
Okay.
what do you like to do? Do you like people? Are you a people person, or do you prefer to not chat a lot with people? Are you good with numbers? Do you like training? Do you like mentoring?
Okay.
What are your skills? What skills can we leverage? What skills are transferable?
Okay. Okay.
And
Okay.
what is your why? No one gets into a business unless there's a compelling reason. So
Sure.
what is that why that you want to have and a business could get you there?
So the last question I want to ask you is: you talk about like your process is like a Disney fast pass for franchises. What does that mean?
Well, that means that we have a process. We start with a questionnaire. We do an in-depth consultation call where I ask many, many questions and hopefully listen carefully.
Okay.
Then I come back and introduce companies to that person
Okay.
and coach and guide them through the investigation process. So at the end, they can make a sound business decision, whether that's a yes or a no.
Okay.
And franchise companies will have things organized. So initially, they'll want you to learn about the background of the company, the start, the management team, their vision. They'll want you to learn about their training program, the support, their digital marketing, all of those things. They're proud of it, and they want to make sure that it's a fit because it's very much of a two-way street. You're looking at them, but
Sure.
they're looking at you as well.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. So the last question I have, and this may or may not put you on the spot and may or may not be difficult, but let's say that I asked you, I'd say, Diane, I want to come in, I want to be a franchisee, I want to own a franchise. And I know that I know, it's not going to be this simple, but if you were to tell me categories of industries right now that are really hot, that I should be looking for opportunities, where would they be?
I would encourage you to look at or consider some of the home services franchises because they're essential services. Most of them are somewhat under the radar. They do very well from a financial return, but they're not necessarily sexy or exciting. So
Right.
sometimes people overlook them, and those can be the real gems.
Yeah, because we're getting older, right?
We are getting older, yes.
We're getting older. Healthcare is kind of an interesting deal there. Okay, Diane, so let's do this. What's the best advice you've ever been given in your journey?
The best advice that I've been given is do what you say. So many years ago, back when I was in advertising, I was walking down the hallway one day and the founder was coming towards me, and I must have looked like a deer in the headlights. and I had never sold anything before. In fact, I was working for an FM radio station. I probably even say this. I didn't even have an FM radio. I had an AM radio. I had to go and buy an FM radio. Anyway, he looked at me, heavy sigh, and he said, Diane, if you just do what you say, you will be successful. And if you can actually sell, you'll be very successful.
There you go. Doubly successful. Doubly successful. Great advice. Great advice. So let's flip that upside down. What's the worst advice that you've ever been given that hopefully you didn't follow? And if you did, what did you learn?
Probably the worst advice was stay in your lane. That's very limiting. I started off with one major. I added another major. I worked for a major utility. I worked for an insurance company. I've been in business for myself. I've always had some marketing component to it, which I very much enjoy.
Right.
But I think being able to learn, being able to take what you have, make a little pivot, make a few adjustments, go forward, to me, that's interesting and exciting.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, Diane, you've shared a lot today, and I'm going to ask you for a final thought. I'm going to do a little PSA here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for supporting, following, loving, friending, whatever you do to help support us. We so appreciate it. We do this because A, it's a passion project, and B, because people share the great feedback of the guests that we have, the information that they share, and the impact that it has. So, www.thesuccessascent. You can go there. You can get all the information on the podcast. We're also at every podcast source, the major ones and the rest of them. And so please share it. Please turn it on to your friends and people you think could benefit by it. And we just so appreciate it. So Diane, what would be a final thought you take us out with to share with everybody?
My final thought would be keep an open mind. My services are free. You can explore, you can learn. You don't have to sit on the sidelines and wonder. There's never a perfect time. Sometimes people come back, but yet opportunity exists.
Well, and such great advice, Diane, and having actually purchased franchises myself and understanding how important the systems are and how you're not recreating the wheel and how you have that community and that support system. In today's world, if I were going to be, buying and looking into a different opportunity, I would certainly go to a place where all those things already exist. And you certainly shared that opportunity. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I know that our audience will find it valuable and just so appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much, Pat. I appreciate what you're doing and helping people in their business.
Well, thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I end every show, be happy, be healthy, be safe until the next time we talk. Take care, everybody. Thank you for joining us on The Ascent today. You can find us at any of your favorite podcast sources. You can also subscribe to get updates and additional pieces of value that we send out at www.thesuccessascent.com. Thanks so much for your support. Please leave us a review. Have an amazing day. Take care.